Hello everyone, this is Fernanda from Prazer da Literatura. This is my second video in English in the channel, and today I will talk to you about another Shakespearean play, this time a comedy, The Merry Wives of Windsor. In my previous video, I talked to you about a historic play, Henry VI, Part 1. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it up here. And today I will talk to you about a comedy, very light-hearted and very funny, The Merry Wives of Windsor. This play is still part of the beginning of the career of Shakespeare. His first play, which was probably Henry VI, Part 1, was written in about 1589, 1590. And this, The Merry Wives of Windsor, was probably written around 1597, so 7-8 years after his first play. There is no consensus as to when exactly this play was first performed, but what we know is that this play has been very popular throughout the years, especially in 1660 when the theaters were reopened in England due to the restoration of the monarchy with Charles II. Before that, the period of the Commonwealth with Oliver Cromwell, all the theaters had been closed in England, and in 1660 they were reopened, and one of the first plays to reach the English stage at that time was indeed The Merry Wives of Windsor. The tradition says that this play was requested by none other than Queen Elizabeth I. One of the main characters here is Sir Falstaff. Falstaff had appeared in another Shakespearean play, Henry IV Part 1 and Henry IV Part 2. He was the companion of young Prince Hall, who later became Henry V, and he was a very well-received character during Elizabethan times, and it's said that Queen Elizabeth herself really liked the character and requested Shakespeare to create another play that had Falstaff in love, and that's how Shakespeare came up with The Merry Wives of Windsor. Of course, we cannot confirm that fact, but it is plausible, and it's an interesting idea to think that this play was actually requested by the Queen and that it contains a character that she liked a lot. Indeed, Sir Falstaff is a very Shakespearean character. He's very funny, he's an old fat knight, and he thinks he can seduce the women, and in this play he thinks he can get the advantage of two older women, Mistress Page and Mistress Ford, who are the Merry Wives of Windsor. So the plot of the play is as follows. First of all, I must say that I was very surprised to read this play because it is so funny. I liked it a lot, and I believe that until now, this has been one of my favorite Shakespearean plays. I mean, if we take into account the comedies and not the language, because of course it does not contain a very poetic language. It does have some word tricks, but it's not as high and superior and well thought of as in the tragedies or the history plays, but because of the plot. The plot is incredibly funny and I really liked it. So I will tell you a little bit of how it goes. So as I was saying, Sir Falstaff thinks he has found a way to live a wealthy life now that he's at the end of his life, a wealthy and comfortable life, if he manages to seduce a married woman, a wealthy married woman. And he has two in mind, Mistress Page and Mistress Ford. So then he sends two identical letters to these two women who are middle-aged women, so they're not in the love game anymore, and they think it's quite rude that he has done that to them, believing that he could seduce them like that. And then, as they were friends, Mistress Page goes to Mistress Ford's house, saying that she has received a letter, and Mistress Ford says, "Me too, and look at that." They compare the two letters, and they are exactly the same. The only thing that he bothered to do was to change the names. So, outraged as they were, they decided to revenge themselves on Sir Falstaff. So they come up with a plan, but before I tell you what their plan is, there is another subplot in this play. This is very characteristic of Shakespearean plays, the comedies as well. There is a major plot, so that is Sir Falstaff and the two Merry Wives of Windsor, but there are also smaller plots that make the play flow and give the dynamic flow of the play. So the subplot is about Anne Page, who is Mistress Page's daughter. She is a young and sweet girl, and she has not one, not two, but three suitors who want to marry her. One of them is slender, and her father approves this match, so she tries to get the two of them to marry. On the other hand, her mother, Mistress Page, thinks she should marry Dr. Caius, who is a French physician. But Anne herself has a different idea. She's in love with Fenton, who is a nobleman, but he has lost pretty much all of his fortune because of his gambling and vices. But he loves her and she loves him, and she wants to marry him instead. Going back to Sir Falstaff, he had asked two of his manservants to deliver the letters to the two women, but they thought it was quite a low job for them to do, so they decided not to do it, and they were humiliated and fired by Falstaff, so they decided to get revenge on the old fat knight as well. So there's a lot of revenge in this play. So each one of them goes to the husbands, Mr. Ford and Mr. Page, and tell them about Sir Falstaff's plan to win their wives. And Sir Page, Master Page, he does not believe it. He thinks, well, the most he can get out of my wife is some harsh words, so he trusts his wife. But Mr. Ford gets green with jealousy, and he thinks that his wife is for sure cheating on him with Falstaff, and he wants to get the truth out of it. He then goes to Sir Falstaff disguised as Master Brooks and tells him the following: I have a deal for you, Sir Falstaff. I am in love with Master Ford's wife, so I will pay you to woo her, so then you can break the barrier, because I know she's a very chaste woman. So if you break the barrier and manage to seduce her, I can in turn do the same after that. So Sir Falstaff believes he's in very good luck, because he will be able to win and seduce Mistress Ford and get paid for it. So he says and brags to Mr. Ford, saying that he already has a date appointed to meet Mistress Ford, which is tonight between 9 and 10 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, when her husband will be away. And Mr. Ford gets furious because his wife had settled a date to meet the old knight, the old fat knight. So then he decides to go there later on to check out what's happening. Sir Falstaff goes to Mistress Ford's house at the appointed time, and Mistress Ford and Mistress Page had already set a plan. So when he arrives, Mistress Page comes running saying, "Oh, Mistress Ford, your husband is here, and he has the whole Windsor at his heels. So if you have any lovers in the house, you have to hide him, and he has to leave the house immediately." And Sir Falstaff gets really worried about the situation, and Mistress Ford says as following: "I have an idea. I know what you can do. You will hide in the laundry basket, and my servants will carry you out of the house." So he does that, and he has to go in a laundry basket full of dirty and terrible smelling clothes, and he gets dumped in the River Thames. So that's how he leaves the house. And when Mr. Ford comes to check out the house and look for the lover, there is no lover in the house. And that's the first time that the two mistresses, the two Merry Wives of Windsor, get revenged on Falstaff. But they think this is not enough. We need to do it again. We need to give him another prank. So then they decide to call him again the next morning, when her husband, Mr. Ford, will be out hunting birds, and that he can come so then they can have their conversation. And of course, Sir Falstaff, feeling a little recovered from that humiliation he suffered, he thinks, well, I have suffered a lot with this lady, but I think she's only plain difficult. I will try it again. And then he brags again to Master Brooks, who is Mr. Ford in disguise, saying that I was there when the husband came, but I sneaked out of the house in a laundry basket. And Mr. Ford gets crazy again. How did I let that happen? The lover was in my house and he escaped right under my nose. So then Sir Falstaff says, and I will go back. Nothing happened, so I will go back tomorrow morning when the husband is away. And this time I will woo her and I will have her. So Master Brooks, Mr. Ford, decides to go there at the appointed time the next morning to find out the truth once and for all. And when he gets there the next morning, the two women had already created another scheme. As soon as he arrives, Mistress Page comes saying, oh, Mistress Ford, your husband is here once again with the whole of Windsor at his heels, and they will kill any lover they find in the house. So he has to leave now if there is a lover in the house. And Mistress Ford tells Falstaff that he has to leave, but he cannot be in the laundry basket again because her husband already knows about it. So she has an idea. She's going to dress him as her old aunt Brentford, who is a fat old lady who her husband despises. So they dress him up as a woman with a shawl and a hat on her head, on his head, and she leaves the house disguised and gets beaten by Mr. Ford, who sees her and says, what is this witch doing in my house? And then kicks her out of the house. Indeed, Falstaff uses a very funny expression when he talks to Master Brooke about what happened. He says, I have been bitten into all the colors of the rainbow. He uses a lot of funny expressions throughout the play, and they are really interesting. I really love them. And then he gets out of the house, and the women are revenged twice. After having had fun with Sir Falstaff, the two women decide to tell her husbands what was going on, about the letters that Sir Falstaff had given them and how they had decided to act. And the husbands were quite surprised at the audacity of their wives and at how they dared to get revenge on Sir Falstaff. And they all decide to do it one more time, that Sir Falstaff deserves one last prank. And then the women call him again for one third time, and he thinks, well, I have already been bitten twice. They make me suffer so much, but I think third time is a charm, so I will do it. I will do as they say. And they tell him to go to the park at midnight and to go dressed as Herne the Hunter. There is a legend that there was a ghost, a spirit of a hunter, a fat hunter, that walked around the forest in chains, and with a horn, very big horn. So then Falstaff decides to do as they say. He gets dressed as he puts chains around his neck and he puts horn on his head to pretend he was Herne the Hunter and to meet the women at the park at midnight. And what the others do is that they take all the kids, including Anne Page and all the kids, to dress as fairies. And when they see Falstaff at midnight, they will pretend to be fairies attacking him for disrespecting the spirit of Herne the Hunter. And at midnight, he's there waiting for the women in his clothes, in his disguise as the spirit. And when he sees the fairies, he gets really scared because he thinks that the people who are allowed to see the spirits are the people who are about to die. And then all the others come to tell him the truth. And in this last part and last scene is also how the subplot revolving around Anne Page is solved. So her mother and father wanted to take advantage of this chaos at the park to marry their daughter to their rightful suitor. So the father wanted her to marry Slender So he told Slender that at that time, at midnight in the woods, she would be wearing white, and he was supposed to take her away and secretly marry her in the church, while the mother told her that Dr. Caius would come and she would be dressed in green and he would snatch her away to get married. But she knew about both plots, so she made another plot with her beloved one, Fenton, and they would put two boys, one wearing white and the other wearing green, that would be snatched away by both Slender and Caius, and they would be able to get secretly married, and that's what happened. So at the end of the story, I know I have taken a long time to tell you the plot, but it's such an interesting plot, and I love it how the women outsmart the men in this play. Also in other Shakespearean plays, how the women are very important characters. Not only the Mistress Page and Mistress Ford outsmart Falstaff and their husbands, but Miss Anne Page outsmarts her parents and marries the person she wanted to marry all along. Indeed, one of the themes of this play is the deceiver deceived. So the person who wanted to deceive others ends up being deceived themselves. Like Falstaff, he wanted to deceive the women, he gets deceived himself. The parents wanted to deceive their daughter and they get deceived instead. So it's very interesting. Other themes, of course, in the play are love, marriage, revenge, jealousy. Jealousy is a very important theme in this play, especially in the character of Mr. Ford, how he never trusts his wife, only to find out that he was wrong all along and she was worthy his trust all the time. And it's interesting to see how jealousy is treated in this play, which is a comedy, differently from other plays such as Othello, and in which jealousy is corruptive, leads people to do terrible acts. And in this, jealousy in Mr. Ford is something to be mocked and laughed at. So it's taken through a different perspective. As I said in the beginning of this video, this play was most likely first written in 1597, but it was first published in quarto edition in 1602, a second edition in quarto in 1619, and the more definite final version in the first folio of 1623. And it's very interesting to see how this play has been adapted in different manners throughout the centuries. Even nowadays, it is still a popular play, and it has been tackled differently by different directors. There is an RSC production, Royal Shakespeare Company, from 1985, in which the two women, Mistress Page and Mistress Ford, they talk about the letters they received in a hair salon, and it's set in 1950s, so just the period after World War II, where women were beginning to have more say. And it's very interesting how they deal with that, and how something written in 1597 is still relevant, was still relevant in 1985, and is still relevant nowadays to talk about contemporary topics. That is why Shakespeare is immortal, and how that is why his plays are still read throughout the globe. So that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do, don't forget to leave a comment and to like it. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please do. I hope you've enjoyed the second video in English. I will try to record more videos in English, especially when I talk about William Shakespeare. So all the best and happy reading.